the skids are under the Labour government here, it has to be said. More than half of the people in this country think the country is heading in the wrong direction. I'll tell you who else is heading in the wrong direction, and that is the family of Sir Captain Tom. The daughter, of course, of Captain Tom has just been found by a Charity Commission report to have pocketed £1.5 million from a book deal, giving no money whatsoever to his charity. Hannah Ingram-Moore has been called shameless this morning in the Sun newspaper. Lots of other papers have got the story as well. The true scale of their plunder is huge. According to Mick Neville, one of our good friends here at Talk, it strikes me as greedy and wicked. Charity Commission Chief David Holsworth said the failings amount to misconduct and or mismanagement. They basically used Captain Tom's name to try to sell their £2.25 million home in Marston in Bedfordshire. They've been banned from doing that as charity trustees. They've also taken £1.5 million from Penguin Publishers and kept all of it. And apparently Penguin have said there's nothing suggesting fraud. It's more a moral than a legal issue. We're going to talk to Tim Cross, retired Army officer, about this. But first, let's take a step back and remember an interview that was done by Piers Morgan with the Ingram-Moores last year.
Well, the charity got a donation and I was paid £18,000 for that.
Once only, or was it?
Once.
So you were paid £18,000. And how much did the charity get?
£2,000.
£2,000. The criticism, again, is obvious, which is that you shouldn't have been paid. This is your father's foundation award, and set up in his name. You're the foundation chief executive. Why are you getting paid £18,000 and keeping £16,000 of it? What do you say to that?
Well, that relationship with Virgin Media started way back in 2020, where my father was paid to be a judge, and judges are often paid.
Was he paid?
Yes.
And he kept that money?
Yes.
Yes, indeed. Tim, very good morning to you.
Good morning. Good morning.
The headline says shameless. I'm not sure if that's strong enough, but the report reveals Captain Tom's daughter kept £1.5 million in cash from the book deal, £90,000 in gin profits, and wanted £150,000 salary to run the charity. I mean, it's quite extraordinary, this, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Let me say, first of all, I just love that picture of Her Majesty the Queen knighting Sir Tom in the garden. That's a very
It's an iconic memory, isn't it?
It is. And he was obviously a great guy. Look, I don't want to get into slandering the family in inverted commas, but let me just say this. Coincidentally, I happened to be on the Moral Maze last night on BBC Radio 4, and we were talking about loyalty.
Yes.
One of the core values of the British Army, or the core values of the British Army, is under the acronym, typically military, of sea drills. And that stands for courage, discipline, respect, and integrity, and loyalty, and serving others. And Captain Tom represented those core values, you know, in a wonderful way, in the way that he served. And I have to say, many of his generation who served in the military through the years that he served, you know, those words meant something to them. And I have to say, sadly, I don't think those words mean much to new generations.
No.
Jonathan Sacks, who was the old chief rabbi, sadly died a few years ago of cancer. Jonathan said, we've moved from an us and we society into an I and me society.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, not everybody falls into that category. Clearly, there are lots of good people around, although, as I often say in these interviews, the armies are deeply like me. You know, we're all flawed and we all get things wrong. But overall, I think that generational shift is a reality, and this sad story represents part of that shift.
Well, I think so, because it's about respect, isn't it? It's about the way people behave. And we know, I don't want to sound like an old fuddy-duddy, but people don't behave as well as they used to behave in general now. Whether you're on a train, whether you're walking down the street, whether you're in a restaurant, in a pub, you know, people behave quite abominably now as a general rule. And I miss the days when people actually had a kind of code of conduct and people actually treated each other quite respectfully and wouldn't consider ripping somebody off. And I'm not suggesting that they've ripped anybody off. I mean, I'm quite surprised that Penguin are taking it so well. I mean, Penguin seem to be saying, well, you know, we paid the money out. We're happy that we paid the money out. We're sorry it hasn't gone to the charity, but there's not really much we can do about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Mike, I know you've sort of alluded to this. We do have to be careful. You know, these sweeping generalisations that, you know, we live in a rotten world. There's lots of stuff about today's world that is better than the world I grew up in the 50s. But nonetheless, I think there is you know, there is an issue of concern here. And what worries me, and I'm sorry to sort of change tack slightly, but this generational thing plays into this whole debate about assisted dying.
Yeah.
Children who want the wealth of their parents early and so on. There's something about that selfishness, that lack of those sea drills that I was talking about, that means that, you know, whatever safeguards people put in place, the reality is they won't work. And I'm quite worried about where that would take us.
Yeah.
So yeah, we need to be, you know, there's lots of good people around. I mean, people say that, you know, youngsters today are useless and all the rest of it. Young people joining the British military are fantastic. They just need good leadership, leaders of integrity, leaders who love them, leaders who work with them, people who serve them, and they are brilliant soldiers, sailors, and airmen. But they do need that leadership, and I think, if I'm honest, again, there's a lack of that sort of strategic leadership in a number of areas, in politics, in the city and elsewhere. So, you know, that's the reality we're living with, and this story is simply a sad reflection of that.
Yeah, I think you're right. Good to talk to you. Tim, thanks very much indeed. We've got to run. Tim Cross, retired Army officer there, on the sad story of the shameless nature of the family of Captain Tom, the daughter of the NHS fundraising hero, who raised £39 million for the NHS, by the way, has been called a plunderer by a Charity Commission report, basically telling us that she's taken £1.5 million worth of cash from a book deal that Penguin gave in order to supposedly give that money to charity. They say it's a moral issue, not a legal one. Well, that's interesting, isn't it?